Hello, and welcome to the Kosh. I'm your host, Timber Smith, and the Kosh is a podcast that spotlights the association of individuals who are associated with the Fox Cities region. Yes, I have already had a mind blank starting this off. It's going to be, you know what though? It's going to be a great episode. That's what we're going with. It's that energy. Let me give you the report of today. Today's report is, it is a little gloomy out. Yes, just gloomy, but it's not freezing. So I will take gloomy, even though I prefer sun and the fact that it's not cold. I think it's going to be a good day. Maybe it might brighten up at some point. And I'm kind of hoping that, because I really would like to go out and take Bosco, the podcast dog, for a walk in the park. Like, it's almost park time, and it's time. And let me just tell you something. He's been cooped up for the winter. He's fed up, and he's being naughty. So that, well, he's naughty every week. But nonetheless, I just know that a walk will do Bosco so good. So, well, Kosh listeners, let me just say this. You already know what I'm going to say. Once again, I have an amazing guest. I don't know why I get so lucky, but I get these amazing guests who want to be on the Kosh and share their voice with you. And this week's guest is Rachel Steiner. Rachel, did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. I forgot to ask before we started to make sure that I phonetically got it right. So, I've been known to slaughter a name or two.
Yeah, it's pretty much spelled the way it sounds.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I've still screwed those up. It has so happened before. So I try not to, though. Just on the respect of it all. So Rachel, can you please share a little something about yourself, and what is your connection to the Kosh?
Yeah, I am the Community Powered Project Coordinator for Appleton, Wisconsin. Community Powered is an initiative from Wisconsin Humanities, which is the state humanities council. We are active in 4 Wisconsin communities, including Appleton. And my job is essentially to work with the people in Appleton to empower residents by creating a project that will reflect their lived experiences and help bring people together in a way that solves a need that they see in the community.
Okay. I want to understand more, but we're going to have time for that. So, where are you from?
I am from Oshkosh. I was born and raised here. I've lived here most of my life. I left for college and grad school, and then I came back in 2021.
Okay. Where'd you go?
I went to college in Minnesota, just over the border in Winona.
Oh, okay.
I went to St. Mary's University, and then for graduate school, I went to the University of Oregon to get a master's degree in folklore, of all things.
Oh, folklore. Okay. That's interesting. So I want to know more about what is the master degree in folklore, because that just sounds super cool.
It is very fun. Folklore is essentially, I like to call it anthropology's weirder cousin, because it's very much like, it's an academic study, but it places emphasis on lived experiences and believing people when you talk to them. And basically, it's just a study of informal culture and the way people live their lives. I get to study a lot of really cool stuff.
And so, because when I think of folklore, to me, I think of like narratives being passed down generation to generation that shape the culture of people. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's absolutely that. It's storytelling, it's oral narrative, it's belief systems, it's rituals, it's dance, it's folk art and craft. It's pretty much everything that people do in some way can be related back to folklore.
How did you find that?
I've always been one of those kids who is like weirdly interested in things growing up. Pretty much everybody in my cohort, which was the 3 other girls, because it was a very tiny program,
Okay.
were like the weird kid who was obsessed with ancient Egypt growing up. So any kind of like strange cultural things I've always been fascinated by. And then I did my undergraduate degree in English, but that didn't let me talk about the things that I wanted to discuss when I was talking about literature. Like, I like talking about the cultural context around a work. So like what is, for example, like the cultural influence of The Great Gatsby, which literary criticism doesn't tend to cover that. But folklore will look at like the impact of a piece of culture and look at like how people respond to it and what shift that has caused in a broader perspective, which is kind of cool.
Okay. Awesome. You ready to jump into the first segment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The first segment is called What in the World is Going On With? And this is where you start with the phrase, what in the world? And tell us what's on your mind.
Okay. Short explanation. My academic research is in medieval folklore, which you would not think is relevant in the year of our Lord 2023, but dear God, it is. So my research is in how people in the medieval era twisted the perception of others into monsters using witch hunts as a case study. Unfortunately, relevant with today's particular rhetoric around anti-queer, anti-trans, even pro-life rhetoric in some cases.
Ooh.
So I want to ask, what in the world is going on with that aspect of the conversation, and why do we keep repeating things and ignoring how history has gone in the past?
Ooh. My thought process would go to, because we don't know our history. Sometimes, I mean, seriously, yeah, that's where I go. But where do you go?
I would agree with that. I think the way that we think about history in many cases isn't helpful. History is one of the humanities, so that's something that I do work with now with Wisconsin Humanities. But I like to think of history particularly as a narrative. I'm a writer alongside being a folklorist, so narrative is kind of my big thing. And I think that with history, you have to look at who is controlling the narrative and
facts.
Why.
That's so much facts. Yes, particularly history. Who got the right to history?
Yeah.
Because it tells you a lot about the slant of that history.
Right. And we can do things like we can look at primary sources to see how things were thought of in the day, but that's largely dependent on what survived, which is sometimes a problem. It also is dependent on who had the access to writing things down, which in the medieval period was mostly clergy, because they were the people who knew how to read and write.
So it's almost privilege in there.
Definitely. Definitely privilege in there, especially since most medieval manuscripts, a lot of them were written in Latin because that was the educated language. Okay. And most common people did not speak Latin.
Bruh.
So it's written in Latin, but those people couldn't read it.
Pretty much.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of it was written down by specifically like churches, because monks were the people who were making the books, right? So they got to control the narrative, which is why a lot of the texts that I was looking at surrounding witch hunts, which were not medieval, I want to point that out before somebody comes for me, they did start in the early modern era. But the thought process behind them started in the Middle Ages, which is what my research was. But a lot of those texts come from people who were clergy who may or may not have known what they were talking about and may or may not have had a specific agenda behind what they were writing down. Like I can think of one particular manual. It's called the Malleus Maleficarum, and it's like routinely listed as one of the world's most evil books because it essentially caused witch hunts, but it's very, very misogynistic even for the time period. So you can tell that the author had an agenda.
So I want to tie this back into the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
So you're thinking that these historic witch hunts they're part of the fabric, right? Of civilization, right? Because it's not just an American thing.
No, and I think when we talk about American witch hunts in particular, we tend to discuss it as an isolated incident of like mass hysteria instead of something that is part of a broader cultural narrative going back hundreds of years. So we lose a lot of context around it.
So what are the similarities you think at this point?
So a lot of people have pointed out similarities to with the rhetoric today going back to like the Satanic Panic in the 80s. And I can directly correlate Satanic Panic in the 80s to 1500s witch hunts. A lot of the accusations are similar. Accusations against witches usually started out by being people who did not conform to societal norms in whatever way. Whether you were what we would now call a queer person in the Middle Ages, because their ideas about gender and sexuality were very, very different. So you can't really go back and apply those labels. Whether you were, for instance, most of them were like single women living alone who people didn't really like. But the charges usually involved things related to children. A lot of times, like now you see a lot of things that are like accusing like trans people or queer people in general of being harmful to children. And that was something that was a big deal in the witch hunts, was that like these are women who are killing babies and sacrificing them to the devil kind of a thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
There really is like a full circle correlation in this approach of the villainization of LGBTQ and particularly trans right now.
Yes. It's very old. And it's interesting because like a lot of, even some of the sources are similar. I think a lot of that has to do just because the sources from the olden days are church sources, and a lot of the hatred that's coming out now is coming out from more religious spaces. So
powerful. Okay. So what in the world is going on with internet trolls? Oh, bruh. They're the worst, right?
Absolutely.
And let me just break this down. All right. So, Kosh listeners, I was recently asked to be to be a moderator for a panel for Blueprint 365. And the panel was going to be on how to maneuver in white spaces. Or that is what the panel is, right? And I was like, okay, they gave me a long list of choices. I saw that one and I was like, I want to do that one because it's something professionally I've been doing for a really, really long time. It's something personally I've been doing for a really, really long time. I mean, I've lived in Oshkosh a really, really long time. I've had a number of jobs where I was the only person of color. That has gone on for some time. So I just felt like it was something like, it was comfortable to me, right? It was something like I could speak from lived experience about, right? And didn't really think about it, but I was I took pride in the fact that they asked me. And I was like, okay, so, they post it on their website and then I share it and then I go, and here's the thing, I'm pretty low key. And if y'all know me, I'm pretty low key. I don't like to be the spotlight of anything. I try to avoid spotlight at all costs. If you actually look at how I do things, and I see the thing and I see it has comments, and I can't help myself. When I see comments, I'm curious. And the main reason I'm curious is that, you know what comments are to me? Like, they're like a sociological artifact of how people feel. No, seriously. Like it's I want to know how people feel. Well, these trolls, let me just give you what the trolls were going. And I try not, and I'm pretty good about not letting things make me in my feelings, but there's some things that made me in my feelings. So these posts were put up, and in 24 hours, there was one person who said that this panel promotes racism. And I was like, huh? Okay. I let that one go. Right. And then the next one, because they kind of describe me, you know, it's kind of a bio and stuff, and they tell my title and what I do professionally. Someone else is like, DEI is fake. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the next troll, and these are all different trolls, right? So I'm just like, oh, okay. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't things mixed in there, because, of course, when trolls respond, other people respond, right? And I'm going to call those allies. I'm going to call the allies responded. So then the next troll was like that apparently I am a worthless, woke member of society. And I was like, woke. Now, that's new to me. Like, I've never actually been called woke. And I don't really, you know, that's a word that I've just never really understood all that well. I don't get it. I think people like to come up with terms and put a bunch of feelings in a box of what they think it is, but it actually doesn't mean anything. Like what I really wanted to do so badly, bruh, is go back and ask the person, what do you mean when you say woke? No, seriously, because I don't think people actually know. It's something I found when the whole big word to get people all upset about was CRT. And when it was all about CRT and people were so worried, we got to keep it out of our schools and all that. And it was just like, my favorite question I always ask them is, what is it? And can I just tell you that it was almost like, seriously, 99.9% of the time, those people that felt that way didn't know what it was. They couldn't give me a descriptor of it. They just knew it was bad because they've been told it was bad. And that's kind of where I feel about woke. I don't think anybody can tell you what woke is. They just know it's bad. And I'm just like, really? Like, I like to give mankind a little more credit. Seriously, I like to give mankind just a little more credit to be knowledgeable. And if you're going to dislike something, I'm going to know enough about it to dislike it. I'm not just going to dislike it because I've been told not to like it, or my favorite people dislike it, and I'm just jumping on the bandwagon like, wow, he doesn't like it, so I don't like it. You don't like brats, so I don't like brats. You know what I mean? It's just frustrating. And these trolls, I have thick skin, and I've been doing what I've been doing for a while. And professionally, I pretty much have thick skin, but I also care immensely. I take it personal because what I think I do is personal, right? So curse these internet trolls, bruh, for making me in my feelings, as I will say.
I will say, I did a TA job for a year in graduate school, and whenever I had pushback from students against something, I'd just be like, can you define that term for me? And if not, I'm sorry, your argument is invalid, because I was teaching argumentative writing. That trick worked a lot.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone. It's not really my purpose.
It makes them think.
Yeah. I do want to, at least, if you're going to put forth the energy and effort to troll, at least know what you're trolling about. That's it.
I think with a lot of recent discourse about this person's canceled or whatever the new thing is. A lot of it is people jumping onto a bandwagon and not realizing what it is that they're actually getting angry about.
Bruh.
Facts. It's such big facts. So that is my what in the world is going on with. That's right. My internet troll gripe of the day. Okay. All right. You ready to move on?
Yep.
Next segment. Next segment is word association. This is where I say a word and you tell me what comes to your mind. And the first word, our favorite word, the unifying word, is always food.
So I'm going to say family just because we're recording this the day before Easter, and I come from a big Catholic family on both of my parents' side, but this is specifically relating to my mom's side. We're going to get together tomorrow for a family meal that I'm very much looking forward to the food at.
So what does a typical family meal entail? What's the main dishes? What's that side dish? And are you required to bring a dish?
My parents are bringing a dish. I am not.
Okay.
I live with them. So.
Okay, fair enough.
Millennial rent problems.
Bruh.
I like that. Millennial rent problems. Facts.
Yeah. But for Easter, it's usually a ham, some kind of mashed potatoes or cheesy potatoes, which I love. My mom is making one of my favorite side dishes, which it's called caramel apple salad, and it's Granny Smith apples, whipped cream, sugar, pineapple, and I think there's some vinegar and flour in there to thicken it up a little bit. And it tastes like a caramel apple, and it's been my favorite thing since I was a kid. So she's bringing that, and I'm very excited.
I'm not gonna lie. I think I might have run across that somewhere in my Osh Vegas adventures here, and that is a wonderful dish.
It is a very Wisconsin thing.
Fair enough. Cocktail or beer?
I can't actually drink much, but when I do, I like to have a glass of wine. My cousins actually own a winery that is right outside of Fond du Lac. It's just past the Little Farmer, if you know where that is. Mm-hmm. It's called Ziegler Winery. They have a really good selection of different wines, anything to really cater to anybody's taste. I tend to prefer sweet wines. My favorite is their Heritage Apple Cranberry wine.
Ooh.
Bruh.
Yes.
Which is so drinkable, and it my neighbor actually calls it the devil's juice because it's that drinkable.
The devil's juice. You know what that sounds like? That it tastes like juice.
It kind of does.
That sums up me and wine. I call all wine juice. It's juice. That's how I feel about it. Like, just give me yummy juice.
Yeah, I like the wine that tastes like juice.
I'm with you on that one. That sounds like that's pretty cool. Do they do tours? Is this something you can visit?
Yeah, you can go visit. They have like a big it used to be a summer camp that somebody who I think won the lottery made, and then when they left the property, it was kind of sitting there, and they turned it into a winery. So the big barn has been converted into this really nice space where people can go and hang out, and they have food. They often have live music. It's just a really cool space to be in. Everything looks really nice. Most of the grapes are like local, or they get them from other local wineries. It's a really nice space that they've created, and I'm really proud of them. Yeah, and they have like stuff for everybody. It's great.
Do they have the thing where you can go and make your own wine and like take your shoes off and squish grapes? That's really what I want to know.
That's considered unhygienic at this point.
Sorry. Look, I'm a sucker from TV. You see that on shows, and it's like, oh, okay, that would be cool.
Maybe if we go back to my Middle Ages version of making wine, that's what they do. But I think they use a machine now.
Not nowadays, huh? So that doesn't exist. All right. Well,
Bruh.
what can I say? Concert.
Haven't been to one since before the pandemic, actually.
Oh, what was the last one?
2017 or 2018, I went to see my favorite band, Florence and the Machine, in Minneapolis with one of my friends. And part of the reason I don't go to concerts often is just because the acts that I like don't tend to come to Wisconsin. But the last show that I saw live was actually a musical at the PAC. I saw Hadestown and I absolutely loved it. So that one was great. I definitely recommend it.
Okay. Is there a dream concert?
Dream concert probably was Florence and the Machine. So that was a very good one.
So we can check that box.
Yes.
All right. It's not on the bucket list anymore.
I mean, if I got the opportunity, I'd love to go again, but
fair enough. Shop local.
I am a big nerd. I got into Dungeons & Dragons during the pandemic because I was also in folklore school, and that's a thing. I had a bunch of storytelling nerd friends, so we got into that together, which was great. And when I came back, I discovered that Oshkosh actually has a local tabletop store, which is called Adventure Games and Hobby. It's right.
Oh,
yeah. It's right across from New Moon. It's great, and they have a bunch of stuff that's like bringing people together to play in the area, which is fantastic. So,
do you got a group you play with here?
Technically, they are all across the country. They are online. We play over Zoom now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's how you do it now.
Yeah. Pandemic kind of helped with that, actually. There were online platforms before, but like Zoom really helps. So we play online on a platform called Roll20, and then we also have a Zoom call up. Because there's some of my folklore friends. One of them's in Colorado. 3 of them are in California. No one's in the same time zone. Basically.
Yeah.
But it's great because I get to see people that I wouldn't otherwise see. And I am their dungeon master, which is very fun for me. So.
The dungeon master.
Yep.
Okay. You know, I've never played. I've always been super curious. What does it entail to be the dungeon master?
Well, I like to describe D&D as collaborative storytelling. It is essentially just telling a story with your friends and using dice rolls to determine what happens. So like as the dungeon master, I have to know the rules because I'm also kind of the referee in situations. But for the most part, I am the person who does like the world building, setting. I kind of have a vague direction of where the plot is going, but I'm not driving the boat. And I get to be the person who is like, if you've played a video game, all of the non-player characters that you interact with, that's me.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Bruh.
Yeah.
Diversity.
I think diversity is opportunity. It's the opportunity to experience things that you wouldn't otherwise see and learn more about people who are different from you, which I think can be kind of scary to some people because you have to open yourself up to new experiences and to having preconceived notions challenged. But overall, I think it's an opportunity to learn, which I love.
Community.
I want to say support, but the feeling for me is warmer. It's the feeling of knowing that you can be in a space and feel comfortable and feel safe and that the people there have your back and that you can trust them. And it's a sense of belonging for me, really.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. Ready for the next segment?
Yes, sir.
Next segment is the Kosh Hidden Gems. This is your opportunity to tell us about something that you think is a gem that maybe no one knows about. Maybe everyone knows about it, but they don't know the particulars about it. I still feel like I've got this morning voice going. I'm just not shaking this thing. Anyway, sorry, Kosh listeners. So what is your Kosh Hidden Gem?
So this is one that's fairly well established because it's pretty much 100 years old at this point. I think 1925 is when it was established. So the Oshkosh Public Museum, I actually used to volunteer there before I got this job. And it's actually a really decent museum. They have a lot of great stuff on local history. They are really making an effort to represent a more holistic view of Oshkosh's past and the people who have lived here. I've gotten to know their curator and their archivist, and they're both really great young women who are dedicated to preserving our history and also bringing to light the stories of history that have been overlooked or undervoiced in past generations, which I think is really great.
When are they open? Are they always open? Or is there seasons? You know, the funny thing is I've lived in Oshkosh a really long time, but I don't think I've gone to the museum.
So they have special exhibits that travel, and like you'll see on the sign outside when those are. I'm not quite sure what's going on lately, but I do believe they're open most days. They're open on weekends. Yeah, I mean, like it's a really great place for families to take kids to learn. They have a lot of really neat exhibits on our history. They have on their main floor, they have People of the Waters, which is like a big exhibit about the Native American tribes that were in the area. And it's also in one of the beautiful old mansions in Oshkosh. So it's also in this gorgeous, gorgeous old house.
I think I'm going to have to try to, I think I'm going to make that a goal. I'm going to have to go check it out. Cause I feel like maybe I've gone there, but I just don't remember. I don't recall it. So
they've had some really cool traveling exhibits in the past year too. Like they had one on, from the Titanic, I got to volunteer at, which was really cool. Because they had actual artifacts from the ship, but it was specifically made for the Oshkosh Public Museum because it was the Titanic, the Wisconsin connection.
Oh.
So they had profiles of people who were either from Wisconsin and on the ship or going to move to Wisconsin and were on the ship, and got to tell some local stories in there as well, which was really cool.
Oh, that's a really different angle.
Yeah.
And when you think Titanic, I don't think anything about Wisconsin.
Right. You wouldn't think that somebody who's going from England to the East Coast of the U.S. is necessarily going to Wisconsin, but this was also the time period when there were a lot of people immigrating to the U.S. from Europe. And a lot of people who were already here had family over there that were coming to meet them or were going back to visit family, anything like that. This is basically like the only method of travel overseas back then. So if you think about it that way, it makes a little bit more sense.
Right. Did the museum have a Lego exhibit?
I don't know because I was not here when they might have had it. I was in Oregon.
It seems like that's the one exhibit that seems like it might stick in my mind because, you know, Legos are cool.
Legos are awesome. They also had a Star Wars one last year and White Christmas, which was really cool because it's the classic movie with Rosemary Clooney. And it had they had some of the original costumes, which was really neat.
All right. So, Kosh listeners, the Kosh Museum. We need to check that out. What's the Kosh need?
Expanding this to the Fox Valley area, but something that I've noticed in doing my work with community engagement is that I am often the youngest person in the room, and I'm 28.
Bruh.
I would love to see more young people, more young adults, and even teenagers getting involved in the community. Because if we want our communities to reflect our values and our needs as people who are growing up in this community and becoming adults in this community, and if the people who are already adults in this community want younger people to stay here, they need to get involved.
Engagement's everything.
Yes.
And engagement is one of the pillars of belonging.
It is.
Like, if you're engaging, there's usually a good chance you kind of feel like you fit if you've got your right place that you're engaging in, or if something is engaging you.
Yes.
So That makes a lot of sense to me. What do you think keeps our young people necessarily from getting more engaged? And here's the thing. I know a number of young people who do and are highly engaged. And then there's just some that I think, they're just caught up in life and they're just kind of got their nose down and moving forward kind of thing.
That's absolutely fair. And I have friends who are in that situation, especially with things like the cost of rent being so high. It's often hard to find that extra time to dedicate yourself and the extra energy on top of that. I think something that would help would be having events that sort of not necessarily cater to, but attract a younger audience, something that a younger person would be interested in getting involved with, that they're passionate about, because the younger generations are so passionate about what they care about, especially in matters of like social justice. But I haven't seen as much of that in Oshkosh as I did in, for instance, Oregon.
We're working on it.
Working on it, yes.
Yeah. I don't think we're ignorant to it or not, but I do think, I think it's something we may be aware of. And it's something like, we move slow here in the Kosh.
Yeah, we do.
But I do think there's the right people in place right now and the right organizations, right leadership in a lot of places that is helping things. I think we're making moves.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not as far as some people would like us to be, but I'll just take the fact that there's effort towards change.
Yes.
That's pretty good. Okay. Awesome. So I think, you know what? We're going to take a commercial break.
Did you know there are children in the Fox Valley in need of hearing aids, but their parents struggle to provide them because of lack of insurance or high copays? I am Juliette Sturkins, audiologist and board member of Here in the Fox Cities, and proud that this small local nonprofit organization has helped fund hearing aids for some 30 kids. Your donation would help more children hear. Visit hereinthefoxcities.org to learn more and to see their smiles. Every child deserves to hear.
Okay, we're back. And now for our newest segment. This segment I am just totally falling in love with every time we have a new guest and they share with us what is their narrative. And so this segment is called Story Time, and it's just an opportunity for the guest to just share a narrative with us about whatever they want. So what do you have?
Okay, this is hard for me because I am a writer and a storyteller, and most of my stories are fiction. I am not good at telling stories about myself.
Bruh.
Well, hey, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about you. It just has to be a narrative. That I'm just saying.
It's hard telling stories about other people, though, sometimes, too.
That's fair.
So this is about me, and I have a complicated relationship with Oshkosh some days. I grew up here. I went to school here. I went to a very small private school. The community I was part of didn't really teach about LGBTQ identities at all. It was very much a no-go topic. And I didn't have a word for what I was because of that. I just knew that I didn't fit in. And that was hard. And there was a lot of pain associated with that. When I left for college, things were a little bit more open, but still didn't quite fit in. And at 22, I figured out that I was on the asexual spectrum, which is one of those queer identities that is very rarely represented or talked about, probably just in many parts because I think it's difficult to describe the lack of something, because being asexual is the lack of sexual attraction. And it's harder to figure that out when you don't have the word for it too. It's very much not something that like you can point to being a little kid and being like, oh, well, I knew I liked boys if you were gay growing up, but I just didn't have any of that. So it was harder to figure out. And in grad school, I was actually very fortunate. Like I said, I had a very, very tiny cohort of 3 other people, and one of them was ace, which was fantastic because it was the first time I was able to meet somebody else who understood. And that was eye-opening and wonderful. And I felt like I belonged, and I made friends for life there. But then I had to come back to Oshkosh after I graduated.
Let me go back and just ask, what is ACE?
ACE is shorthand for asexual.
Okay.
And so I moved back. I had to move back in with my parents. So it was kind of just like a double, oh, I don't want to do this.
Bruh.
And, but then I got my job with Wisconsin Humanities and Community Powered, and I had the opportunity to get to know my community in a way that I hadn't before. I think it was hard coming back to a place where I'd had a lot of painful memories, and being forced to look at it in a positive lens with a new eye. And I was able to see some things in the Fox Valley that I didn't see before. So my job was primarily in Appleton. So one day I was walking down College Avenue in Appleton, and they have this art project there where a lot of the power boxes for traffic lights are decorated in art from local students.
Yes.
And on one of the street corners, there is one that was made by a student that is depicting the asexual flag with a person in front of it that says, I exist. And I just stopped and stared at it because that was the first time I had seen myself represented in my community.
That's powerful.
It was. And it gave me a profound sense of hope that I hadn't had before, that things were changing, that perhaps kids growing up like me didn't have to have those same feelings of not belonging and not knowing why, or feeling isolated. So yeah, like just that one tiny thing, so small but so important.
I think to me, the really important thing is to be able to have a word to describe. Like when you feel something and you don't have the vocabulary to describe the feeling or what it is. So there's you can tell somebody exactly, well, this is who I am, or this is what I am. Right. And when you don't have the word for it, that's gotta be frustrating.
Yeah, it was very much like I couldn't pinpoint what made me different.
Right.
Because I didn't even necessarily not have the word. I didn't have the concept.
Yeah. That's part of it. Exactly what I'm saying. Like when you don't have the word, there's not a concept to associate to a word. Like there's just
like I didn't know that asexual was something you could be. I didn't know that humans were sometimes like that, and we are. But I think a lot of that has to do with what was and was not talked about growing up. But even then, like I said, asexual is a rarely represented. It's being talked about more, but still every time I see in anything a narrative where they have an ace person who is being accepted and loved for who they are, that makes me so profoundly happy.
facts. I can appreciate that. Yeah. I think the fact that we as community are having more of these conversations so people can find their communities.
Yeah.
And because I feel like there's a community for everything.
There really is. And the thing is that, like, I graduated high school in about 10 years ago now, which is scary to think about. And I wouldn't have seen that on a street corner back then.
Not likely.
Yeah. So the change brings hope, which is great.
Awesome. All right. So it's that time. It is that time. Rachel, if you didn't know, let me help you out with what is that time? It is the time for cool music and the topic of the week. So this week, the topic of the week is always 99.9% of the time chosen by our guest. And this week's topic of the week, Rachel, is...
I would like to talk about using the humanities to create community.
Ooh. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. So first, I think I should probably do what we talked about earlier and define the term.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like, I'm big on when we get in our circles of people that understand us, when we get in our community, and I'm going to use that term, we don't need to define these things, but, we have a broad audience of individuals listening, and even the most wise, most intelligent, there's tons of pockets of things we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think humanities is one of those things that's a bit trickier to define in general. I mean, the term comes from the academic institutions. It's basically just every field that deals with humans and human culture. So it's history, it's English and literature, it's languages, it's even social sciences to an extent, it's religions, it's all of those things, folklore too. But I think that's a term that people outside of academia don't necessarily run into a lot. So like when I tell people I work for Wisconsin Humanities, they're often like, what is that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the really cool thing is that there is a national endowment for the humanities. There's also a separate national endowment for the arts. Because of that, there are a bunch of state humanities councils that are doing public work like Wisconsin Humanities, which is really great.
Okay. So tell us more about what you're doing and this project and this year-long assignment.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I am the project coordinator for Appleton's Community Powered Project. And our goal is to use humanities to work with the people in those communities in a way that's very much from the ground up. We're not coming in as an institution saying, here's what we think you need without actually asking people what they think they need, because that's been a problem with a lot of initiatives for a while.
Bruh.
That's just been a problem with humankind.
Yes, it has been. So we're very much trying not to do that. So we started out going through some training back in last June, and then training in different methodologies. So I learned how to do interviewing, which I kind of already knew how to do because fieldwork in graduate school, even though pandemic hit, so my fieldwork class looked very different than normal because it had to be online. I learned how to do certain events for people that can bring people together as communities with a humanities kind of theme. I learned how to just talk to people and navigate different social circles, which was really interesting and really informative. So I came back to Appleton. I got to know different facets of the community, which was great because I was interacting with a whole bunch of people that I wouldn't have normally gotten to know. For example, I got to know a lot of people in the Hmong community in Appleton who are just absolutely fantastic people. They're fantastic business people. They're fantastic philanthropists. they're just doing so much good work. My Community Powered is working with the local libraries in each community, and I've been working with Appleton Public Library. And my library mentors, Yevu and Adriana McClear, are just fantastic at helping me navigate.
Big shout out to Yi and to Adriana.
Yes. So basically, I did a lot of talking. I did a lot of conversations. I did a lot of mini projects. We're using something called an asset-based methodology with Community Powered, which is where you look at what a community needs based on its strengths and not its weaknesses. So you're coming from a more positive mindset. And you're also using it to build on a scaffolding is what already here. So you're not reinventing the wheel, which is nice. And it took a while. There were a lot of false starts on my end, just because certain projects weren't feasible, or because we'd gotten feedback that the community didn't like the idea, that I had to then go, okay, we're putting the brakes on this. We're going back to the drawing board. I'm not plowing ahead because somebody said this is a bad idea. And
let me just ask, was it a bad idea?
It's...
I mean, because somebody feels that way.
It's debatable. Her concerns were valid. I will say that.
Okay.
We were looking at doing a project with, and our partners for this are Fox Valley Literacy. Okay. We were looking at doing something where we would have people from the refugee community do a storytelling project, where we would teach them how to use our digital oral history equipment to tell their own stories and be in control of their own narrative. And one person rightfully brought up a bunch of ethical concerns with that project that I could not solve in a year. So, which were completely fair. And I'm honestly, like, it was a hard conversation to have because I gave her the idea and, like, the first thing out of her mouth was, that sounds white supremacist. And I was like, okay, we need to take a step back here. What are you seeing that's wrong?
That's a way to start it off.
Yeah. So it was kind of, I don't think anyone who is well-intentioned ever wants to hear that their project has the potential to harm people.
Facts.
But that is something that we do have to contend with. So I'm very grateful that this person gave me their honest opinion and I was able to put the brakes on something before it went ahead. So we redesigned our project. We are working with Fox Valley Literacy. We're working with their students to create basically experiences, because Fox Valley Literacy is a wonderful organization in Appleton. They do one-on-one adult tutoring. Sorry, the dog.
Bosco the podcast dog doing his thing.
And they do one-on-one tutoring with adult students, primarily people who are learning English as a second language. So we are working with their students to create experiences that will allow them to get to know one another and have time to talk to each other. And we're doing that through the humanities. And when I say doing that through the humanities, I mean my project is mainly focused on storytelling and sharing tradition. I'm using a method called story circles, which is exactly what it sounds like, and it's very simple to do. It's essentially you have like 6 to 10 people sitting in a circle. One person is the facilitator who leads, and then everybody goes around in the circle telling their story. And then you talk about it afterwards. So we'll be doing that with Fox Valley Literacy, and I'm very excited because they'll get to practice their English, which I know is something that they want to do. They'll also get the opportunity to talk to people who are in a similar situation to them, and get to know them, even though they might not have earlier, because it's usually one-on-one tutoring. So I'm very excited that we get the opportunity to build on the good work that Fox Valley Literacy has done, and help them create something even deeper.
I like that. So when
So we are doing a closed, not open to the public story circle in early May, kind of as a test. And then I will be working with them to train Fox Valley Literacy and Appleton Public Library on how to do the story circles, because I leave my position at the end of May because it was a 1-year position. But the good thing about Community Powered is that our projects are designed to keep going after the project managers leave.
Got it.
So our goal was to create something sustainable, something that people could carry forward and use kind of as a spark, which is great.
What can the community do to help? Is there anything the community can do to help?
With this particular instance, I'm not sure that outside help is necessarily needed, but I would love to see other organizations doing this kind of thing, doing the story circles, doing the storytelling, and just giving people a chance to get to know each other. There's been a lot of, like, the reason why we chose this particular project was because the thing that people wanted to see from Appleton was an increase in belonging and connection with other people.
Correct.
That has been a big theme since I started. And
me too.
Yeah.
Bruh.
And as a folklorist, of course, I think that storytelling is one of the main methods that people use to foster empathy with one another and get to know each other and connect on a deeper level.
I think stories or narratives are something that people like. It's just relatable. Like,
it is.
Everybody, no matter who you are, has stories.
Right. And I think stories have the power to make people care in a way that just facts don't. Because you can't really refute somebody else's story because that's their experience. You can't say, well, no, that's not how that works, because that's their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has the power to bring people together in a way that is unexpected. Like, I might be talking to somebody who is from a completely different culture, is from a different country, has very, very different life experiences. And because they're sharing their story with me and I'm sharing mine with them, I get to know them in a way that allows us to see things in common.
Do you think this is something that's only going to be rolled out in Appleton, or will it make it to the Fox Cities? Will it make it to the Kosh?
I don't know. I would love to see other places using this method. It is a fairly well-established humanities folklore method that is kind of, it has its roots in oral history and also the civil rights movement. It was used a lot back in the civil rights movement to get people to talk to each other, and it was used to create pieces of theater based on the stories. That's not necessarily what you need to do with it. You can just like take the stories and leave them. But you can also use them to create a larger project. You can use them to start a conversation. There have been places that have used story circles to discuss a community issue like homelessness. And like my project is basically focused on just bringing people together in a way that's positive, and that, like, I can't create belonging in Appleton in a year. That's not something I can do. I can create a moment in time where people feel like they have a sense of belonging and where they feel safe, and they know that there are places around them that can create those experiences.
That makes sense. Any last things you want to add on to this?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that, like, the other communities that we're working with are doing such amazing things too. Racine, Spooner, and Forest County Potawatomi are the other three. Racine has been doing an asset mapping and project with their LGBTQ community. Forest County Potawatomi, which is Potawatomi tribe, has been focused on...
I want to ask, what is asset mapping?
Asset mapping is, so I mentioned the asset-based methodology earlier. Asset mapping is I create a map that, and it can be a physical map, it cannot be a physical map, it depends on your method. But it's basically just asking people in the community what they see as community strengths.
Okay.
Yeah. I did manage to create one early on. It's on the community-powered blog that I've been running. It's on Google Maps. So, yeah, I'll send you a link for that. And Forest County Potawatomi has been doing reviving traditional lacrosse from their tribe, which has been really cool. And then Spooner has been doing a whole ton of projects. She's been trying to get youth involvement and involvement with local history, and she's just doing so much, and everybody's been doing such good work, and I'm so happy to be part of this initiative.
Since I do believe you said this is going to be wrapping up, do we know what's next for Rachel?
What's next for Rachel is a job hunt. I am hoping to continue in doing similar work. Where that is up for debate. Staying in the area would be nice. I'm not sure if it's possible, so we'll see.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's that time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kosh listeners, for spending time with us and giving us your mind and your ears. You already know we're a work in progress. We're always trying to improve and get better. We also love engagement. I will say that I've been getting some pretty good emails lately. People who want to be guests in the future and just some questions here and there. And I appreciate them all. Just know that you can always reach out to us at askthekosh@gmail.com. Once again, that is askthekosh@gmail.com, and feel free, ask us questions. If you want to connect with a guest, a lot of that has been happening too. There's movement happening in the community, from people listening to episodes and wanting to meet each other. Also, please feel free to get involved in an episode. Leave us a voicemail. We do have voicemail available through our website. The website is thekoshpodcast.com. Once again, that is thekoshpodcast.com. Leave us a voicemail. Do well wishes, do shout outs, ask questions. We'll incorporate it into the show. Your participation is super important. And then lastly, but never least, please feel free. Help us raise the profile of the Kosh. We think we have something special going on here. Leave us a review. Subscribe to the Kosh. Let others know how we're doing. Oh, you know what? I always forget to ask every week. When we share episodes with people that you think will find value in the episode. That's kind of a big thing. So now on to what is truly my favorite part of the show. It is shout out time. So Rachel, who are you shouting out?
Well, I kind of already mentioned them, but my library mentors, Adriana McClear and Yi Vu, who have just been doing amazing work in the community. They're both super women. I honestly don't know how they get anything done. They have so much work. But they've been so helpful and so great. And then even though they're not in the community or even in the state, my folklore friends and my D&D group, just because they've kept me going through very difficult times. So
awesome. My shout outs this week, I want to shout out Blueprint 365, which is part of Madison 365. I had shared earlier about the trolls. Well, it is what it is, but thank you for thinking that I'm worthy to moderate. I really, really appreciate that opportunity. I want to send a shout out to Eric, who is part of the Toward One Wisconsin conference team. We have a DEI conference coming up here to Appleton. I do believe the dates are the 23rd and 24th. But this is a big conference, and we're super excited about it. There's great participation. There's buzz, and the numbers, it sounds, I was talking to them yesterday, and they said, they haven't had an in-person one of these since before COVID, but this one's going to break records, and that's powerful. So thank you, Fox Cities region, for being those people and wanting to participate in the event. Want to send a shout out to my partner in crime, Brianna. You already know. And a shout out to Lyle from Fox Valley Comedy. I went to a comedy show last night. You know what was cool about that show? It was free. That's right. It was a free show at the Times, and there was 5 comedians. And here's the better thing about the free show: it was funny. All 5 were funny. So this wasn't like, you get what you paid for. We got so much more, and we didn't pay. They were amazing. And Lyle, thank you for bringing these things to our community. Lyle, you do amazing work. So we appreciate you so much. And then lastly, I'd like to give a shout out to the crew at Jensen's. If you don't know about Jensen's Supper Club on Bowen Street, y'all missing out. So I snuck in for a nice little fish dinner last night, and it was fire. And they just have the best crew of people. It's warm. It's friendly. They just do a good job. So, and they do a really nice job on their libations. I'm going to just throw that out there.
Bruh.
So, okay. We are at the end of the episode. And the last thing that we've got to do, Rachel, is, well, you've got choices. So you can either give us some parting words of wisdom, or you can tell us, what would Rachel of today tell 12-year-old Rachel? Or option C, which is all of the above.
We'll do option C. I think Rachel of today would tell 12-year-old Rachel that, hey, your weird interests actually paid off. And that following what you love is going to get you into some really interesting places. I think it was hard growing up as being the weird kid, but then finding a community of people who were also the weird kid and seeing how my interests are actually relevant to the world and how I can use them to improve the world was just fantastic. For words of wisdom, something that I've been struggling a lot with lately is just having hope when it feels like the world is on fire all the time. And I think that for myself and for others, the best thing that you can possibly do in that situation is just to love other people. Go out and love other people, and that will renew your sense of hope, and it'll also just make you feel good. So,
Facts. So what you think? Great. I like that. Simply stated, the Kosh.